Former Tshwane Mayor Cilliers Brink says he's not giving up and is adamant that there's still room for him to return as mayor. The DA in Gauteng says it intends to ask its national leaders in the GNU to intervene. Brink was voted out of his position yesterday when the ANC tabled a motion of no confidence against him for a slew of failures in the municipality. The ANC, with its majority of seats in the Tshwane Council, is looking at a new power-sharing deal with various political parties. Let's take a look.
I can't preempt the outcome of a democratic process, but what we've said is I will be the mayoral candidate. We'll field our candidacy and we'll fight to win. And the opportunity will be there for the parties in council to make their decision. And it is important to say, as I said to you before when we spoke, we made every effort to persuade the ANC not to bring a motion of no confidence. That would have given the parties the time and the space to think carefully what's in the best interest of the people of Tshwane. Unfortunately, they rejected that. They proceeded with a motion of no confidence. And there now seems to be confusion about what the plan is. I mean, it's easy to vote a mayor out, vacate the mayoral committee. It's more difficult to put together an arrangement where people will actually take responsibility for government. We are clear as to what we will do. We will continue with the agenda that we had before, and we're open to talking to other parties. We know we don't have a majority, and that is important to juxtapose against others who seem to be confused as to what the road ahead is for Tshwane. Capitalize on it, that makes me sound a bit Machiavellian. I don't think that's the attitude. The attitude is we had a plan for Tshwane, we were serving the people of Tshwane, we were making progress, and we still have that plan. And that plan is reconcilable potentially with other parties, but we can't speak on behalf of those parties. They must exercise a choice somewhere in the future and then account to the people of Tshwane how they decided. I can tell you who we won't talk to, and that's the EFF and Action SA. Action SA is a sort of an enabler of chaos. You can't trust a word they say. They're emotional. They plunged the coalition into a crisis. And now they threaten to place the EFF, a party whose values are completely opposed to those of the Democratic Alliance, at the center of power in Tshwane. The other parties we're open to talking to. But it is important that whoever wants to talk must actually say what their intentions are. It doesn't help talking about nothing or talking or shouting at each other, as unfortunately the scenes in that chaotic council meeting that was projected. We need an orderly conversation, and the Democratic Alliance starts by saying this is what our intention is.
All right, let's explore this further now. Angelo Fick, Director of Research at Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute, is joining us live now. Angelo, thank you so much for your time this evening. Lots is happening there in the capital, and we hear from one moment a mayor is ousted, the next minute he says that he still believes he has hope to return. At the same time, the ANC is saying that no, we are going to be leading this new arrangement that goes forward, and then Action SA seems to believe they can have a mayoral candidate. What do you make of all of this?
So this has to be seen. It's not just that Tshwane on its own is having these coalition issues. It is coalitions in neighbouring metropolitan areas in Gauteng province, but also dynamics inside the Government of National Unity. It will impact on how this plays out. So we know that the realignment in the city of Johannesburg and the ongoing fluid realignments in the city of Ekurhuleni will be impacting how the individual parties respond and act in Tshwane. We've seen this before, where parties take their regional and provincial, shall we say, ambitions and then shape coalitions at municipal level. It often has very little to do with the performance of the particular government in power in that municipality. We've seen this in the city of Nelson Mandela Bay. We've seen it in Ekurhuleni. We've seen it in Johannesburg. The Democratic Alliance will certainly should have learned this lesson before in the city of Johannesburg under Dr. Mpho, where municipal and national initiatives were at odds. The national desires of the party overrode whatever decisions and coalitions had been built at local level. Cilliers Brink may be discovering that it's in the opposite direction now, where the national officers of the Democratic Alliance are in the Government of National Unity. They're in step in government with the African National Congress. And so Action SA may be taking this opportunity for their own attempt to return to power. and have power because they have a leader who was once mayor for the very party that they're now standing against, and they're decoupling from the DA in Johannesburg, maybe influencing the way in which they've been decoupling from the DA in Tshwane. We know the Auditor General's report on the City of Tshwane finances indicates an improvement. We know that the mayor himself and his administration has been in open conflict with the Municipal Workers Union, particularly around the treatment of workers. But this idea of who is going to pay and how cities are going to pay for wages under the new deal that was negotiated is, of course, a question that not only mayors have to deal with, but provincial treasuries as well as national treasuries.
And will they be able to deal and with that particular question as easily as they seem to think they can?
I'm not certain how that's going to work out, because the incoming administration, presumably led by an ANC figure, or an administration in the city that is, predominantly ANC, may face the crisis that the Minister of Basic Education is facing, which is that they will be expected to pay out of their budget for this negotiated settlement with municipal workers, as provincial education departments are expected to pay for teachers' salaries, but actually don't have a greater allocation in the municipal allocation budget from provincial treasury or even from national treasury. And that's not the way to keep the city of Tshwane, the capital of the Republic of South Africa, on a path that is about improved financial management. And so it's easy to say you're going to pay people. It's far more difficult to find the money to pay them. And similarly, it's easy to want executive positions. It's much harder to have that executive position translate into better municipal governance. The residents of the city of Johannesburg certainly know what that has felt like over the last 8 years with coalitions of instability. It'll be interesting to see how Action SA and the African National Congress together work with the EFF, given the national dynamics in Parliament and also the dynamics inside what seems like increasingly unstable Government of National Unity coalition.
And I'm keen to hear your thoughts then on how, this impacts everything, particularly because you now hear Solim Simanga, for example, who says that, at national things seem to be going well, according to him. And then he says, but at a provincial government, we saw this when the provincial government was being constituted, the tensions thereof between them and the ANC at the time. And now he says that seems to be filtering through to municipal level, listening to what you just said as well. So how does it then impact all these three layers, if at all, going higher up to national?
Absolutely. So the ministers that have been deployed in cabinet from the Democratic Alliance have opened with a very sticky wicket. We've had the Minister of Basic Education, Sibiwe Khwarube, boycott, the signing of the Bela Bill. We've had her now indicate that there is this massive funding crisis that could lead to a larger crisis in an already hampered educational system, where the provincial treasuries are getting shortfalls to the provincial departments of education. We've also had a Minister of Public Works who's has just issued a statement this week that he very much supports the court order in Cape Town for the eviction of homeless people from the grounds of the Castle of Good Hope. The irony is that he and the Mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, very much look like they're symbolically repeating the gestures of the 17th century when that building was built, of removing Khoi San people from the city centre or the town centre where the original settlement was built. Here we now have brown-bodied people excluded, and we have a minister and a mayor who seem to celebrate a court judgment that seems very colonial in its view of where poor people should be. You also have a Home Affairs Minister who's inheriting the Zimbabwe exemption permit issue, as well as concerns around the new migrant visas that they're issuing and how that'll impact the way in which different people travel to and from South Africa. So at national level, things may seem good, but you have a moment in which the Democratic Alliance ministers have, as President Cyril Ramaphosa warned them in his letter, they have to implement extant policy and can't just go with what the DA wanted. They must serve as members of cabinet in a government that has an extant policy. At provincial level, we've certainly seen the DA feeling quite chagrined and angry that they've been left out of Manyazela Sufi's formation of a government, and that may be filtering down to the municipal level, where they've lost They've long ago lost the ability to govern in Johannesburg, the economic heart of the country. They've now lost the seat of government in the nation's capital. And a lot of this seems to have very little to do with the performance of the Democratic Alliance-led administration, and much more about exploiting divisions between that administration and workers, and not necessarily looking at that in conjunction with the longer-term financial stability of the capital. And my suspicion is that there may be people in these new coalitions who may have word that people in National Treasury or people in Provincial Treasury will give them the money to help out in this, sort of having to pay civil servants a better wage. The irony, of course, is that the lack of increases for the civil service happened under an ANC national administration. And the austerity budget of Minister Godongwana is going to roll down to local government, and we're going to be seeing the results of that, not just in the provincial government departments like education, but we're going to start seeing it in municipalities, because the municipal grants are coming from provincial treasury, which eventually comes from national treasury.
So could personal ambitions also be at play here?
Absolutely, always. Politicians in South Africa are creatures of ego. I mean, some of us think we have strong egos, and then you encounter the way in which politicians talk about the world and realize it really is about their desire to be mayor, their desire to be premier, their desire to be MEC or MMC. And it's not just individual, personal desire for the title, it's also about what resources that gives you access to. The residents of Johannesburg know very well, and the residents of Tshwane might be on the brink of finding out again, no pun intended there, that actually when people take up positions in executive, in mayoral committees, what they do is they get access to the corporations that run those services, and there are procurement contract processes. Chippy Olver wrote very well about this and how this was done in Nelson Mandela Bay. This is a moment in which the austerity measures don't necessarily cut out the procurement irregularities and the ability to divert funds to preferred candidates. Everybody knows about the Auwal situation, about the cholera outbreak, about the mismanagement of water resources. And, Tshwane is not alone in this. We've seen this in the crisis for water boards. The Magaliesburg Water Board and the Vaal Water Board are in near bankruptcy because the municipalities simply haven't paid them. And so that kind of control of municipal funds is really important for local patronage networks in South African politics. And that means it's not just the egos of the individual politicians or their parties, it's also the business people who stand to benefit from these changes in regime at municipal level across the country.
Let's see what happens then. They've got 13 days to tell us how things will look like. So we don't know what arrangement it's likely to take now, but keen to hear your thoughts when we do know which direction things are going. That was Angelo Fick, the Director of Research at Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute.